Hey there, I'd like to welcome y'all to another episode of Between Two Rods, which is a fishing bucket list podcast. And man, we get on this show and we tell great stories. And I got some really great stories today. I got a guest with me today that I'll introduce you to in a sec. And I am very much looking forward to diving in some things with Coach. And so just wanted to mention before we get started that our podcast is brought to you by Kramer Marine, our friends over there who keep me on the water even when I do dumb things to my boat, which is pretty much constant. Those guys always get me running. And also basstacklesupply.com, which you can get all your freshwater fishing tackle. Great selection, and they'll take good care of you. So please support them. Coach, I am super glad to have you on the show today. We got to talk a little bit on your show about 2 weeks ago, and I said, man, we got to talk some more, right?
That's right.
So
I'm just glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Man, I'm very excited to have you and continue our conversation. For those of y'all that may or may not know Coach, you have been a host of Panhandle Outdoors for 16 years now.
20 now.
Is it 20 now?
Yeah,
my data was outdated.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. And you're also a Bay District Schools board member, and you've served in that capacity for a while now. You've also taught and coached for over 45 years?
44 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
incredible. And you also wrote a book that you showed me on the show, and it's called Full Box: 100 Years of Fishing and Boat Building History in Bay County, Florida.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. And so we'll get into that during our conversation, man. And there's just so much we can talk about. But I really want to kind of start with the Panhandle Outdoors, and you've done that for a long time now. And how did that come to life for you?
Well, it's funny because I had not planned on doing this Panhandle Outdoors for, I'm still teaching at school and all, but Howard Tackle started a show with Scott Lindsay, down at Fox 28, and he got Roy Ray to do it some because Scott would do it. About 30 days later, Roy Ray called me and asked would I come in and help him and just tell some fishing stories and stories out of my book. And then Captain Roy, we did it together a couple of years, and then he went off on his own and did a show, and here I am left with this show 5 days a week, 5:30 in the morning, and I just had this passion for doing it, and because I knew we were communicating with fellow outdoorsmen, and it was helping them. It was simple as that.
When so much of it's local too, and I love that because you get so many of the local voices in fishing and outdoors and hunting in our area, and there's nothing like it. And you're the only daily outdoor show in the country, right?
Now we are, yeah. There were a lot of them a good while back, but they just sort of faded out, and people retired, and different things happened. So but we were blessed. Last month we did show number 5,000.
That's amazing.
So we're very blessed to do that. I'm very thankful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and you get an early start every single day, pretty much. So.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Of course, I'm retired now, so I'm not pressed. Afterwards, I'd get up early, go do a show, and then go to school all day. And at times I was coaching track in the afternoon, so I had a busy schedule for about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, and now you got the school board that you do as well.
Definitely,
so
that's busy too.
Stay busy all the time.
Yeah.
So in that period of time, how has the outdoor community changed in the way that you've seen it?
Well, the big thing is the communication aspect of it. In the early years of, it'd be word of mouth. You'd call somebody, a fish biting over here or whatever. But the outdoor world, with social media and the mass communications, there's so much of it brought together so fast. On my show, what I get a kick out of, I would, in the early years when they would send me pictures of the fish they caught, and I would hold the picture up sort of on a tripod over here, and the camera would zoom in on it. And now it's all electronic. Boom,
Yeah,
boom,
you
boom.
pull it up on the phone.
You saw that.
So
So even that, and I get a kick out of how the baits, a lot of the different baits have changed, and yet the old standby, the old standbys are still very popular, but always a different thing on bass fishing I'm talking about. Of course, the boats, the size of the boats and the motors and all getting offshore really fast. And of course, the technique of the fly rods, the lightweight spinning reels. So technology has just made amazing progress.
Yeah, I find that a lot of the tackle is to attract the fishermen more than the fish. And I had this conversation with Ariel Payne the week or two ago. My go-to of any freshwater bait is the Gary Yamamoto Senko. and is the most boring looking bait, but I'll put it up against anything.
Yeah.
If I had to cast one thing, my life's on the line, and I had to catch a fish, it'd be a Senko because I feel that confident in them.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
It's amazing.
So you touched on it, the electronics that are so different, and that's a big thing in freshwater fishing now, to where the live sonar and all that is, to me, catching fish nowadays is almost like a video game. But you think about the guys who were catching 30, 40 years ago, and the limitations of technology, GPS and all that.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable how those guys were so good at it then, and we're all so reliant on tech now.
Yes, it is, and it's showing you exactly where they are, exactly how deep they are, and some of them are swimming in the right direction. This and that, and it's crazy, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's especially deep sea to me. Like to be able to go out and catch fish, deep sea fishing in that period of time, I can't even conceive of how guys would do that reliably.
I would refer to this during the podcast about writing my book and doing the research on it and talking to these old captains.
Yeah.
They've all passed away now, but that's one of the questions I asked them. And they would do dead reckoning. They would leave the pass, and they got out of the pass. They would have like a stopwatch, and then they would look at the paper mill stack, and they would go so many minutes or whatever, make a turn here and make a turn there.
Wow!
And there was a water tank there's a water tank over here in Seagrove Beach. If they went west of here, they could go by that old water tank. And the family that had that water tank was put in 1925. And in the 1940s or 1950s, they moved the water tank over, and it messed everybody
messed them all up.
And they didn't know it. Yeah.
Wow.
The May cottage, the May family homesteaded that area right there where Alice Beach is now.
Yeah.
And they owned that. It was funny how
that was the marker.
Yeah. They moved the marker on us. So.
Yeah, that messed everybody up. Nobody's catching fish. Yeah.
They would go like 10 or 15 minutes this way, and then, they would always tell as they're going out to pass the smokestack on the paper mill. They always knew what that wind was going to be doing. That's little things like that we take for granted.
Well, and that's good, but then when you get where you're 25, 30 miles out, you can't see anything.
Right.
It boggles my mind because I grew up in enough technology that we're relying upon.
Well, what they did was look for a solid bottom, get away from the sand, and they had these sounding leads. They would throw them overboard, and I have some. They would drop them down and pick them and pull them back up if it had some sand in it, whatever. They keep going, and they would put octagon soap in the concave area, octagon soap in here, so whatever down there would stick to the soap.
And they could see what the bottom was like.
So they're bringing up bottom, and once they got in some little shells, and a little bit of muddy bottom,
then they know
they started slowing down. Yeah, and because it was that was their
That's
GPS.
Fascinating, man. So that kind of stuff is in your book?
Oh yeah. I've got pictures of the sounding leads. I talked to these old timers, and they would go. They would just start. They knew about what area, but they kept moving. If they were sand, they would not fish there. Yeah. And once they were looking for structure, rock and coral.
Yeah, rock and coral, hard bottom.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I'm glad you wrote about that kind of stuff because I feel like if it wasn't shared in that capacity, that the knowledge would be lost.
Well, Aaron, I would not have known all that stuff either if I had not talked to them face to face, person to person, and got those interviews.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So, of the guests that you've had on the show, are there ones that stick out to you as just ones that were really memorable guests? I mean, so many of them in 5,000, but are there any that really stick with you?
I've talked to some celebrities and all. I get a kick out of all of my guests. They're really special to me at all different levels. And I, once a month I do Students of the Month. We had Students of the Month. The kids that really excel or have a love for the outdoors. And I really enjoy that. It's two different students every month, a boy and a girl. And I look back on them, and some of them are now, one of them is now actually a guide. 2 or 3 of them are fishing guides. And I look back on what they've learned to be that, to make a career out of the outdoors. And so I really enjoy. I've had some special guests, but nobody really jumps out at me any more than anyone else. I mean, you have so much knowledge. Look at experiences you've had on your bucket list. That was amazing, the things you have done. Really.
We've had some great times.
Yeah.
Every single one of them is special, you
Yeah.
know. And it, I think if you don't get out there and enjoy that, then it just, man, your life's going to pass you by. You got to make the most of it, and you got to go out and experience the things that you want in this world.
Yeah.
So
I would when I go to these tackle shows, the different conventions for outdoors, I would interview some of these, the Bill Dances and the Bubba Blade. I met Bubba that makes it Bubba Blade, and all these guys are genuine outdoorsmen, and they'll stop and they'll talk to you.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy them.
Yeah, and I find that picking the brains of those people and getting their stories, and doing it like in this kind of format, man, it is great because you can really get into depth of asking questions. And I'm sure the show has been that for you, to where you get to talk to these folks that you may, you and I have been around each other numerous times in the past, but we've never really had the chance to sit down and talk for 30 minutes until you had me on the show.
Yeah.
And that was great because we learned so much about each other and what, how your mind thinks about fishing and outdoors and just life. And, that's never a bad thing.
Well, when you run into a fellow outdoorsman and you connect with them because they have this passion that you have, you love the outdoors, you want to take part in it, and you want to preserve it for future generations. And you just want, and that's a bond that we all share.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
And I think the more that you get into outdoors activities and definitely, as it's become more integral into who I am, protecting it for others is something that really resonates with you. And I don't know that, when somebody really first gets into it, I don't think that hits, but when you see it going away or you see it changing, it makes you passionate about keeping it.
For sure. We've had the last 2 years, we've had some quote developers want to get some state park property, and boy, once that news got out and the folks jumped on it, that ended when it hit Tallahassee, and the governor vetoed that stuff. So that's good, but we have to stick together like that as conservationists and stay on top of this.
Yeah. And I think in Northwest Florida, where we live, it's inherently important too, because that's what makes us different than the rest of the state. We are much more oriented towards that kind of lifestyle, and the outdoors activities. There's so many different components to that in our ecosystem here.
Yeah.
If we kill that, we're changing what we are, and so I hope that our people that are politicians and hope people that are vocal in the community always stand up for that.
Aaron, I tell people we're so blessed here in the Panhandle or the Great Northwest. We couldn't do a daily outdoor TV show in the rest of the country. I mean, and do all the things we do. There's so many things we get to do here on the hunting end, on the fishing, the freshwater fishing, offshore fishing, inshore fishing. And so this Florida Panhandle, we have so much stuff we can do locally. Yeah. And then you throw in some of the things that are special, and one of the big tournaments and everything they have, the billfish tournaments and Sea Quarters Marina, King Mackerel tournament. That's my all-time favorite tournament because they raise money for leukemia research. Yeah, and they've done it for 22 years now, and they've raised over $1.5 million for leukemia research because the guy that started, Jimmy Crowder from Tallahassee, lost his daughter to leukemia. Yeah, and he vowed to do something about it. And each year they have that tournament. We fished it every year. The last couple of years, I got a couple of buddies from Valdosta. We actually won it in 2013. We won $10,000, which is a big deal. Nice. But the thing about it is a family atmosphere. But I think about the Big Bend and the Panhandle and these tournaments that have so many good causes it goes toward. I love that special tournament, Carabel. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you really think about it. Like Bay County, Florida, and the Panhandle of Florida have so many different kinds of outdoor activities. We literally have it all, man. Yeah, freshwater, inshore, offshore, you name it. Like there's so much going on here.
It's amazing because I get caught in a bind because on a Saturday I might have a kids tournament to go, a kids fishing clinic. They want me to go to that. And there's a bass tournament weigh-in, and then there's something else going on. It's 3 or 4 things almost every weekend, and I can't cover them all. But fortunately, we'll get pictures sent in, and I can talk about them. But man, you're right. What a special place we live in.
So what's your go-to fishing place in here, around here?
Okay, you want inshore or freshwater?
Pick one, yeah.
Well, okay, we'll start with freshwater. I grew up freshwater fishing. in Telosa Creek, Ocklawahan River, and Lake Talquin. My granddad had a boat landing on Lake Talquin, and there were just some special times there, special fishing trips, special fish fries with family.
Oh yeah.
And I love that area. And Telosa Creek is where my dad grew up fishing. It's a little small little creek most people don't know about. Coming on down, we have a little fish camp at Howard Creek, Galen.
Yep.
Yeah, and I tell people I thought I was getting a fish camp I got it about 10 years ago. I go there a lot, but I got me a fish camp. But actually, it's turned into a work camp. I tell people I'm going to my work camp because so and so needs done.
You get there to relax, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we're working. There's a pole barn with a camper underneath it. But that's a special that Howard Creek.
That's a great area.
The Apalachicola River system
Yeah.
as it comes out into the bay. We've talked about that on the show.
We sure did.
What special places.
I love from Howard's Creek down south. There's so many good spots down there. And we talked about East River. I love East River. Yeah. And so there's so many good places I love to hit. I just feel like I can catch fish here anytime.
I was surprised and pleasantly surprised when you came on the show and talked about those places because a lot of people don't know about them. And then you had already fished them and all. That was really cool.
I used to do a lot of club tournaments with the Panama City Bassmasters back before I had kids. Okay. And then when I had kids, like you kind of slowed the tournament stuff down a little bit. But we fished a ton in that area, everywhere from Wemico down to East River and all those little creeks and cuts in between, man. I got hidden spots that, I mean, I feel like nobody knows about that, I'm sure they do, but I've fished it a ton and I got banks. I know if I need to get my 5 fish, I can go hit that bank and catch my 5 fish and all that. So,
I talked to Waylon Graham Sr. He's passed away now. He lived down there. He lived to be about 88, and we talked one day down there. I've known him a long time. And he told me he was telling me what a special place it was to him because he grew up there. He said, Winston, there's places in this area I still have not been to yet. Yeah. And it's been a lifetime down there.
Yeah. There's so many places. And I think when you are familiar with it and you do have places you can catch fish, you drive by so much stuff to fish the stuff that you know too. And you ever meet Mike Pitts? You know who he is?
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, Mike, I got to fish with him a couple different times, and that dude knows that body of water about as good as anyone I know, right? And we would go up and down banks, and he would tell me what we're going to come to before we get to the spots and all that. And people would be fishing in front of us. He didn't care because he's like, I don't care if they're in front of us. He goes, I know I'm going to catch the fish that I'm going to catch, you know. And his confidence and knowledge of that body of water is what really stood out to me. And he was so good, man. Being able to sit in the back of his boat and fish with him was incredible. So
that's special. When you got a fishing partner like that, that's special.
Yeah. He's a great one.
But you're talking about bass fishing. I bring this up. Bobby Smith. You know Bobby Smith?
Oh yeah, I know Bobby. Yep.
And I've had him on the show a couple of times, and I've gone fishing with him some. That's what made me think of it. And he started as a young person documenting each bass that he caught. Yeah. He had a ledger about that thick.
I have heard about his
ledger. He brought it. He brought the ledger on the show years ago and showed me. And it showed, the date he went, the where he went, what the conditions were, the wind, and then he wrote how many fish he caught. Yeah. And he started documenting this when he was a teenager. Yeah. And he's around my age now. And I went with him a couple of years ago when he caught bass number 50,000. Wow. He had documented 50,000. I went with him this past year. I went with him when he caught bass number 60,000. Wow. Each trip documented.
I've heard he does that.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah. And I have a lot of admiration for him because he helped start the catch and release in the bass fishing tournaments. In the early days of bass fishing,
they wouldn't do it.
They kept them. But he got a little bit of graph from some of the other folks and all, but he kept doing it. He'd bring them up there and let them go.
That's awesome.
And he started, some other people, younger people caught on doing it. And now, of course, we all do it now. Yeah. But I have a lot of respect for Bobby Smith and the bass fishing.
So when I was doing those club tournaments, I had heard about Bobby. And so it kind of inspired me to do something like that where I was taking those coordinates and I had a handheld GPS. Yeah. And every fish I would catch, I would mark it. And then at the end of the day, I'd go back and put in notes about what I was using, what the conditions were, et cetera. And then I color coded them based on month of the year. Oh, yeah. And I could actually see migration patterns of when I was catching in certain, like back of the creek, front of the creek, main channel. And it taught me a ton about bass behavior on that river
Yes.
system, man.
Yeah.
And that I think having a scientific mindset to it. I mean, these fish are doing what they're doing because of conditions,
Mm-hmm.
and it's weather, it's seasonal, it's it's what the currents do, the tide movement and stuff like
That's
that.
right.
Especially on that lower end, man.
Yeah.
That tide movement affects those bass and when they're eating and what positioning they have on
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Let me ask you a question now. He was getting ready to catch number 60,000, so we talked about it, and he said, "I'm gonna let you know what trip I'm gonna catch it on." Where do you think he picked out to go catch number 60,000?
Oh gosh, I know he fished Wimico a ton. Man,
You hit it on your first guess. It was
Wimico? Yeah, that would be my guess.
Yeah, his other second choice, he'd gone the week before at Lake Seminole,
Yeah,
and he had to quit fishing
yeah.
because he was about to hit number 60,000. He wanted me with him so I could film it and make a show out of it. So he just quit fishing Seminole. So between Seminole and Wimico.
Yeah, focused on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what immediately came to my mind. So yeah.
That's cool.
Well, that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite fishing story of all time that you got, man? Whether it's yours or one you've heard.
Oh, wow. Now, you want a stretch story or you want a real story?
I'd take either one. Sometimes the stretch stories. I tell people I have three versions of my stories.
Yeah.
I have the edited version, I have the partially edited version, and then I have the version that is just the full crazy story of here's what really happened, right? And so I told the second version at Rotary a couple of months back about some things that happened on the bucket list trips that we do.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them get crazy. I mean, things happen. I mean, out of our control, but sometimes weird things happen. But I love fishing stories. That's what this is all about.
I'll go back to one of the early ones that actually I have it in my book, and it was right down here at the end of Harrison Avenue where it happened. The Anderson family, when they settled, they first settled Southport. Southport was called Anderson when they're named after them. Then they moved down here, and they had the fishing fleet at the end of Harrison. The dock went straight out there at the end of Harrison Avenue. And Captain Virgil Anderson, he was a remarkable guy. I was so thankful that I got to know him and visit with him. And it was when I did the book, I went out there time and time again. They ended up living on Grand Lagoon, and his wife, Miss Mary. And I would go out there one time, and she said, "And when are you coming back?" I said, "Well, next Monday after school." And she would have a little piece of cake and something, and a little cup of coffee, and I would sit there, and he would tell me story after story. And one day I said, I asked him about a second or third interview. I said, "Well, do y'all have any old pictures of those days? This is 30s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. Do you have any old black and white pictures?" He said, "Well, I've got some, but nobody ever asked to see them." I said, "I would love to see them, Miss Mary."
Yeah.
Aaron, she got it from the little kitchen table there, and she walked down the hallway. I never will forget it. And reached up in the closet, turned around. She had a cardboard box about this wide, like this, and she came to the table and dumped out hundreds of black and white photos from those days. It was like a 30-year period. And I said, "Oh, my goodness." And so we started going through them. Yeah. So he had one, Captain Virgil. He was a character. If we have time, I'm going to tell his story. But anyway, to finish this story right here. It was holding up a king mackerel, which is not that unusual. And what had happened, he was down here at a dock, and he was down in the engine room working on the engine, and he said he heard him pop, 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 pop on top of the deck, pop, 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 pop on the deck. So he climbed out of the engine and all, and it was a king mackerel that had jumped in the boat. Okay, and that would pop, 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 pop. And he actually took the picture of it so people believed the story. He had eyewitnesses. So that was just one of the fascinating stories. But wow,
that's hilarious.
What a character. And you want to hear one more about him?
Yeah, sure.
We got time?
Yeah, we got all the time.
Okay, listen. He was too old to go to World War II. So they made him an honorary Coast Guard guy, but he would take his boat out and look for German submarines out in the past. But, that was, and several of them did that. Yeah. But after the war ended, he... of course, in the early days, he was catching snapper and grouper. That's the big money fish. Well, but war ended, and all of a sudden he started shark fishing. I said, "Captain Virgil, why were you shark fishing?" I said, "All that grouper and all." He said, it was simple to talk to me like I felt like I was asking dumb questions. He looked at me and said, "Well, I made more money catching sharks." Yeah. I said, "Well, yeah." That's what I said. Yeah. Huh. At that time in American history, after the war ended, a good amount of money was going into medical research. So we didn't have to have war money.
No kidding.
So what he did, they were paying him to catch sharks, cut out the liver, and cut that liver out, and they would buy the liver for research.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, and he was catching sharks right and left. That's a lot of shark pictures.
Wow.
Of course, the little boy in me, I said, "Did you ever catch a great white?" He said, "Yeah, I caught some." I said, "How big was the biggest one?" He said, "About 20 foot." Oh, whoa!
Yeah.
20. Captain Virgil, I said, "Was it?" He said, he looked at me like I was supposed to believe him. So I said, "How do you know it was 20 foot? Do you have a tape measure?" Son, we didn't take tape measures on the boat.
Yeah.
So this is after the war, 1947, 48. It was toward the mouth of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
About 2 hours this side of that area. Obviously, he knew where to catch sharks. And he had a big old crank, and his crew, they'd caught one and had to crank it up, had a power winch, or some World War II surplus is what it was. And they got it upside the boat, and what they have to do, they had to bring it on board. And he said the boat almost turned over.
Wow.
They got him on board, a big old great white. And he said it was 20 foot. And I said, "Well, wait a minute, how do you know it's 20 foot?" He said, "Well, the beam of my boat was 18 foot.
Yeah.
His tail was hanging over, and his head was hanging over."
Yeah.
I said, "Holy cow, did you take a
It's
picture?"
20-footer. Yeah.
He said, "Son, we didn't have any cameras." I said, "What'd you do? What'd you do?" "Well, we cut him open and got that liver out
Yeah.
and pushed him overboard."
Shoved him back over.
Back over.
Yeah.
He said, "We got a lot of money for that liver."
Man.
But anyway, those stories like that are just,
That's wild.
I just love those stories. And that was a true fish story again. That's Captain
Yeah.
Virgil Anderson. He lived to be about 92, I believe.
Yeah, no
Great
kidding.
guy. So
That's interesting. I
yeah,
hadn't
about 3
heard
years.
about
3
harvesting
years.
the liver.
He did shark fishing for about 3 years and went back to grouper and snapper.
Yeah. I was grouper snapper fishing about a week ago, and all we could catch was sharks.
Yeah.
Well, we did get a few snappers, but
Yeah.
eventually. But yeah, the sharks were pretty lively out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Stealing. So let me ask you this. We've talked about some of the bucket list trips before. What's somewhere that you have never been fishing or hunting that you would love to go that you've never been to?
Oh, that's an easy one. I would love to go to Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've never made my Alaska trip. We've talked about it and all, but just can't quite get it all together. But I know you've been there. You showed me your pictures.
I swear that the state of Alaska should sponsor me because I brag on how awesome Alaska is all the time. Like it really is an incredible place, and it's so beautiful. And I mean, even if you didn't catch a fish, I mean, it's still one of the best experiences of your life. So I definitely hope you get to check that out. That's incredible.
Well, so many eyewitnesses, folks have been there like you. They've all told me the same thing about the beauty of it and the grandeur and catching fish is just a bonus, icing on the cake. But I do want to do that.
We're talking about, me and some friends were talking about trying to go back there next July, and really that's a most optimal time in Alaska is July time frame, because almost every kind of species is in season in July, right? And so we're kind of targeting middle of July, but really the kings are in, the sockeyes run, and the halibut, lingcod, I mean, rainbow trout, all of it. It's all in season that time of year, and the weather is great. It's a little cool in the morning. It warms up during the day.
Oh, man.
You can layer up and do that where it's comfortable. Great time to be there. And so if y'all listening at home have never been to Alaska, it is at the very top of my list of ones I would recommend. And Coach, I hope you get to experience it for yourself real soon, man.
I'm going to keep trying.
Keep trying, yeah. Well, you can come with us next July if you want, man. We're going to get a crew together and go.
We'll have to check it out. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have lots of fun. So, so one more question on fishing stuff, and then I want to ask you about some of your educational background things. So, what do you think the future of Panhandle Outdoors looks like? Have you thought about in our changing landscape of the digital world and all that, where you think it'll go?
You know, that's funny you say that, because my answer is I don't know. Okay, I'm not sure, and I just I'm not that tech savvy to do a lot of things that y'all do, and I just right now I think I have grassroots connections with my people, and I say my people because I know the viewing audience. I get all kind of correspondence from them and pictures, and I run into them all the time. They love the format of it. It's sort of a down home kind of daily show that talks about outdoor things that we do. The future, I don't know. I just don't know, but it's something I pray about it, and I ask for God's guidance in doing the best show I can do every day.
Yeah,
and it's just I feel it's almost like a calling. I'm not trying to be corny or anything, but it's like a calling. I don't make that much off of it, but it's just, to me, like a calling to just spread the word on outdoors.
Well, and it's like you said, man, you have the students come in there and you talk to them and you do outdoor education
Yeah.
with the students. And so you're reaching people through that platform.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that's what I think that you're trying to do is reach people and impact their lives in a positive way.
Yeah.
And you certainly do that with the show, man. It's
Yeah.
great stuff. And the knowledge that you're getting, through you and your guests is great things that the people are picking up on. So yeah. Awesome. All right, so this is kind of the midpoint in the show. So we have a segment we like to do called Fish, Fact, or Folklore, which is perfect, right?
Okay.
And the question I have for you today, and this is a old folklore thing, or maybe it's fish fact, I don't know, you tell me, is if the cows are eating, the fish are biting. You ever heard of that one?
I have.
Yep. So what's your thoughts on that? Have any opinions?
I believe that wholeheartely.
Yes.
Yes, I do. I believe that because they're moving around feeding, and so everything in nature is doing that at that time. I really believe that.
Yeah.
If they're sitting around on a shade tree and all, no need to go fishing.
If they're laying down in the field, I get so wigged out by it. I literally am driving to the boat landing and I'm like, oh God, what are the cows doing?
Yeah.
And everybody thinks I'm crazy. Well, my friends think I'm crazy, but I trust the dudes that have done it for a long time because they're usually the ones that are like, man, if those fish are, if the cows are eating, it's on today.
Yeah, so, I believe that.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. That's a very important subject.
Yeah.
So, so we talked a little bit about the book, and so it chronicles 100 years of fishing and outdoors and boating in Bay County. What made you want to dig into that and start coming up with the stories behind it and writing that book?
Good question, and the answer is easy. I was down around the St. Andrew area one afternoon, and I ran into an old timer, and he started telling me a story down close to the marina about fishing in the old days. And I was driving home, and I thought to myself, now, that story needs to be documented somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was driving home, I live in Southport, the closer I got to home, it just hit me like a epiphany. Do a book. Go interview these people and do a book. Now, I'd never done anything like that. So I go home, I walk in the house, and I'm all excited. I tell my wife, I said, Gail, I said, I want to write a book on the history of fishing and boat building. If you'll help me. She said, well, I think you're crazy, but I'll help you. So we started a 3-year journey, and my daughter, Wendy, was so much help at doing layout. But I would go interview people. Yeah. And I'd have their voices, and she would, type up what they said, and we just started making files. Yeah. And then the coolest one, there's so many cool things. I want to say the coolest. I would go down to the city at the public library, and they had microfilm the old newspapers on microfilm, and I started reading them. And Aaron, I read every microfilm newspaper from 1872 to 1972. Wow! I would go through them now. I would see if I saw the word fish or the word captain or saw a picture of a fish, I would copy that. Wow. And then I'd make a copy of it, and it's not digital before. And I would take it home in a file and put it in, that's Captain Anderson here, or here's Captain Rathfield, here's a story on him. And the newspaper back then would document the catches, like the Rathfield family caught 60,000 mullet or whatever. Yeah. They documented it. It was a big deal. Yeah. They didn't worry about the NFL or NBA or anything like that. That was not news. It was a big deal, yeah. But local fishermen, it was a big deal out of St. Andrew and Panama City and Parker. Yeah. So I would do that, and I just kept doing that. And I thought, I'll do this in 1 year. 1 year came by, and then the second year came, and I wanted to, I may have told you this, the one single thing that just, I can picture this like yesterday. The Ware family from St. Andrew. Did I ever tell you this story? Have we got time to tell you a story about the Ware family? I don't have time, or do?
Oh, no, you got time.
Okay, the Ware family. Sandy Ware and all the Otto Ware and all of them, they were been in St. Andrew a long time. And they actually were descendants of the Ware, of De La Ware, the French family that founded Delaware. Yeah, Delaware. The Ware family. They actually sailed down here in the 1870s in a 20-foot sloop and came around the Keys and came to St. Andrew, where the big condo is now. That's where they landed. But so anyway, so that's how far back they go. And I wanted I went to University of Florida. Okay, and as a student there, I would go to the library some, and not a whole lot, but I would go there some. But I remember upstairs, the second story was what they said called a historical collection. I rolled my eye back then, a 19, 20-year-old, a historical collection. I really don't care much about that at that age.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I told Gail, I said, let's go down to Gainesville. I want to go up on that second floor and look at that historical collection and see if anything's up here in the Panhandle about the old families.
Yep.
So we make the 5-hour trip down there, and I go in and we'll go to the second story, and the guy running it looked just like you see in a movie how that professor looks, that old bookworm-looking guy, and I said, sir, here's what I'm doing. I said, do you have anything on the Florida Panhandle pertaining to fishing or boat building or history? He said, I think I got something you would like to see. You sit down over there and put these gloves on. I had to put the gloves on like you see in the movie, these gloves on. So I'm sitting there. And he goes, it's cold up there. All the documents, it's cold upstairs. And he opens the door in a colder area. And he comes out. I'm thinking he's holding like a baby because he's walking real slow. And I'm thinking he's holding like a baby, And it's a big old thick book. And he lays it down in front of me. It's the 1882 diary of the Ware family in St. Andrew, a daily diary.
So he made you wear gloves to be able to touch the book and all
that? Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I said, can I touch it? He said, yeah. Can I turn the page? Yeah. I read every page for like 3 or 4 hours, every page.
No kidding.
We took a picture.
Wow.
And oh, my goodness, it was amazing. And back then, you'd appreciate this. The first thing that he wrote down, or Lambert Ware wrote down, was actually what the wind was doing and what the tide was doing, because they really didn't have any roads, so they had to go from place to place by boat.
Sounds like Bobby Smith's descendants.
Exactly, exactly. And then I put some of the in my book. I put about seven different things that happened. One of them was, a wildcat got my yard last night and killed my dog.
Yeah.
Those things like that. And then he went to so-and-so point, and he went to Apalachicola on Christmas Day, and went to the Methodist church down there, and because they had a Christmas tree, but he didn't go in. I mean, little things like that. But they would sail down to Apalachicola, for a couple of days. It was just the history of that. And when I was mesmerized by reading that.
And that really got you kick-started into writing the book and all that. Yeah.
Yes, and it just kept going. I'd go interview, and oh my goodness, they were just.
I'm sure that there's so many different things that you found out. Is there anything that really stands out as a really surprising thing that you found out while writing the book about our history?
The human nature story, the families that they were just tied so much to the fishing. They were living and die by the fishing, and they were. C.J. Bryan was the first guy that actually had when the train came in, he would actually first guy to actually put the red snapper on ice. When the ice machine, when they started making block ice, 250-pound blocks, that's when they were able to ship the red snapper and all the different places on the train. When the train went in St. Andrew, and when it came down here, they were able to do that. And C.J. Bryan was a remarkable guy. And right there at where Balboa comes on Beach Drive, that he built that house there.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But and the tarpon fishing, I was really surprised. In the 20s, tarpon fishing was a big deal down here.
I've mentioned this to Steve Taylor when him and I were talking, and up until maybe about 5-6 years ago, I really didn't hear a lot about people catching tarpon here. No. But it's kind of made a renaissance to where there's a couple of folks that are doing it around here now, and I mean it's pretty good.
Yes,
that's one I have not caught yent that I really want to try and do a tarpon trip and.
Well, Captain Greg Gladden, who was in my class, and he just had a love for fishing growing up, and went to college, played baseball in Moser, went to college, and had a good job at the courthouse, but he just had this burning passion to be a captain. Yeah. And with his wife pregnant, he went into be a captain. He's still a captain. He specializes in tarpon.
He's found a great niche.
You know Greg?
Yeah, I know Greg, and then I think Justin Leake's doing some of that too. Yeah, and so those guys are great resources for catching tarpon in our area, and the ones that they're catching are great tarpon.
Yeah. Great young captains. But anyway, in the 20s and 30s, what they would do, the guys from Birmingham and Montgomery, that Alabama connection, we've always had it, still have it, coming down to going fishing. And there was a guide up there at a Lynn Haven Hotel, and he specialized in catching tarpon. And they would actually take the tarpon back to Birmingham with them. And
really?
had some mounted. But he would go, that's before the dam was built. The Deer Point Dam. The dam was built in 1962. So all of North Bay had a great tarpon fishing industry. And that was stayed at Lynn Haven Hotel, which is right at the foot of the bridge on Florida Avenue before it burned down. And that's what they were talking about. Then it died out during the war, and never came back in the 50s and 60s because it was, or 70s, because it was a fish you could not eat, so nobody cared anything about catching it. But now the sport of it's come back.
Yeah, it's amazing. So one other thing I wanted to ask you while we have time today is you've been in the teaching and outdoor education field for 44 years, right? And so what was it that drew you into that kind of position, and what has kept you in it so long?
Well, it was interesting, and I started in 1993. I love teaching. I love working with young people. I love coaching young people. It's just been my calling in life. In high school, 17, 18-year-old kids. And I loved coaching them in track, basketball, and football. And in the early 90s, I noticed these kids come in on school on a Monday. They were not talking about, back in our day, we'd come back on Monday, look at this fish I caught. Look at that big old deer I shot, or something. And the kids just were not talking about outdoor stuff. Yeah. So I go up to the principal, I'm at Mosley, and Larry Bollinger. I said, Larry, I want to put a class together. I want to make up this class. I want to teach the kids outdoor stuff. I said, so I named, how to fly fishing, how to throw a cast net, how to read a compass, how to set up a tent, just roll out stuff. And he said 3 words, and I always think about a leader, what leadership he. And back in those days, the principal would say, well, go back to the gym and roll the ball out, Well, Larry Bollinger said 3 words. He said, go for it.
Nice.
So I put that class together. And I couldn't talk into the kids. I talked 12 boys to sign up for the next year. I call them a dirty dozen because we got our hands dirty. And everybody said, well, Coach, what kind of class you got? Is that Redneck 101? Because we'd be out there doing stuff. I said, yeah, Redneck 101. But then we started frying some fish behind the gym, or we'd fry some deer, or cook some deer meat on the grill.
Now you're everybody's best friend.
Next year, I want to sign up for that class. And it just snowballed and got to the point where we were taking 300 or 400 seniors a year.
There's so much you learn in school, but the outdoor education and athletics teaches you things that I don't know that you learn in the classroom, right? Yeah. And it's life skills. Yeah. And do you think that in today's world, some of those things aren't as prevalent, and is that why it's even more important now that we get kids into that?
Oh, certainly it is. And the kids, they want to do this. They really, once they get there, they want to learn these things. And I've seen amazing love develop during that class, love for the outdoors that they normally would not have if they'd not been exposed to it at that age. Yeah. So I have so many stories, heartwarming stories. A group of girls, we did our camping unit, and they got together and asked their parents if they could go out on Friday to San Andrew State Park and set up a tent. So that first time they ever set up a tent. Yeah. And they camped out at St. Andrew State Park. Yeah. And what was cool, I always make the kid, I said, we don't have any homework in this class, but you're going to have one assignment outside of class, and I want you to make something with your hands, build something. Yeah. And I got some of the most remarkable projects.
That's awesome.
And birdhouses and all kinds of stuff like that, but just some creative things.
I feel like there's such a line that is drawn between the book knowledge that I've obtained through going to school and things that I've learned through, fishing and sports and those kind of things that taught me things like patience and hard work and sticking to something. Like there's so many of those skills that I would have not gotten from just getting behind a book, right? When you get your hands on and you learn that adaptability is another thing. Like you got to be able to be adaptable and learn to kind of go with the flow on that. You just don't get those skills sitting behind a book.
Exactly. You have to get outdoors and you have to really try. And I've seen them on Monday mornings. Would have story stick, and they would share the stories of their weekend outdoor experiences, and they have a stick. This is pre-COVID, like a big old stick. I told you it was like a Lewis and Clark Indian stick and all that. But they'd pass it around the class, and they would share. The first thing every Monday morning, they would talk about the outdoor activities they did, and it would be really. And they couldn't talk if you didn't hold a stick, you couldn't talk. Seniors, love talking anyway. So, and they started doing things that at first, the first September, October, it wasn't very talkative, but pretty soon they started sharing. You know what I did this weekend? Outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would think that in today's world that those things are even more critical because kids aren't out in the world as much as they used to. Man, we talked about this before the show that, people are so connected to their device. When I grew up, when you grew up, we didn't have some of those electronic connections that the kids grow up nowadays, and they are immersed in it from the day they're born.
Yes.
Which is why outdoor education is even more important now than what it was 20 years ago.
When I started, it's a lot more important now than ever. It really is. And I'm a firm believer. Now we have 12 different schools teaching outdoor ed.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that, from Pensacola, or this side of Pensacola, all the way down to Apalachicola.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So where do you see outdoor education going in the future? Are there things that you would like for the school system to do that we aren't already doing?
Well, listen, I'm glad you brought that up. This is, okay, I spent my lifetime in school. You can teach outdoor education if you got somebody in school that has a passion for it. Mm-hmm. So I've been to, like, South Walton High School, the baseball coach there. They do a great job with it. I've been to Tallahassee. I have one of my former students, Missy Timmons, she's a lobbyist over there, big, strong lobbyist, and I coached her in basketball, so they've got a connection. And she and Mitzi Prater in the Republican Party, they've got connections in Tallahassee. I've been for 2 years in a row now. This past year, she set me up a schedule. They love outdoor ed. I went 15 minutes, you appreciate this, of scheduling, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning in Tallahassee during the session, about 3 weeks ago, during the session, maybe 4 weeks ago now. Every 15 minutes, she had me set up to go see a representative.
A different one, yeah.
Yeah, I saw 15 representatives that day, 15. Wow. And I told them briefly about the class. They all loved it.
Yeah.
And the one that really loved it, the lady from Fort Myers, and she had 2 teenage boys, and she's going to be Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
And my personal goal is to get it in all 67 counties.
I love it.
We have it like in 6 counties now. But isn't that be great? And you can do it. It doesn't cost anything. You can put it through the PE program.
Yeah.
You can do a wheel. My daughter's going to try to put it in Gulf County next year.
Yeah.
And in a little 9-week class. Start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and being able to turn that into online curriculum too, so
the
kids can get access to it 24 hours
still,
a day. Yeah.
I'm not that crazy about it. If you take it to virtual school, because you're not really getting out there. You got to get out there and do it. I mean, you can learn it. That learning part's great.
Yeah.
But then you want to get out and do it.
Yeah.
And there's something else we did in class. Every year we'd have a project. We'd plant sea oats.
Yeah.
We planted from Mexico Beach, they got wiped out by the storm, all the way out here to all along. We'd plant, a couple of thousand sea oats every year.
That's awesome.
That was our field trip.
I think I saw pictures of that a couple months back.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it with young people is getting them enticed and getting them hooked into it. And then once they get an interest in it, being able to open that door with them to exploring it. Because, man, I will tell you, once you catch your first fish and you kind of feel that inside of you, something changes, man. I remember when I got into fishing, how it felt when I was like, man, this is awesome, and be able to disconnect from the world. I just think when people can experience that, then it becomes something that's more critically important to them.
And I think in a lot of situations, it's a generational thing where your granddaddy took you fishing or your dad. But what we got to keep in mind, everybody has not been blessed with that situation. And I've had a lot of my kids, or some of my kids, have not had anybody take them to do anything outdoors.
The opportunities.
And that's why I put it in there for those kind of kids. And then it gave to kids that did have experience, like the Justin Leaks and the Greg Gladden that were in my class.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. They helped the other kids.
Yeah.
And it was just a win-win for all of us.
It's awesome. And when we impact one of us, then that person's impact gets compounded, and that's awesome to see.
Yeah.
So, looking back at some of the accomplishments that you've had through your career, I mean, is it, what do you hope that people will look back and be like, man, that was impactful?
It's I don't have a quick answer for that. I want to do every day, do the very best I can.
Yeah.
And I want to help young people. And I want to, I give a talk. Every year I will give a talk to them. And this is probably it right here. Every year, the last day of school with my seniors, I will give them Coach Chester's Philosophy of Life. I spell philosophy with an F. And underneath that, I have put a whole list of F. Like faith, family, friends, fitness, food. And I talk about it. And the last thing on the bottom, I put fishing. And I said that encompasses the whole outdoors.
Yeah, sure
and
does.
I just every day I try to do the very best I could with the students, and I just loved. I've been blessed. I just loved what I was doing, and it sort of carries over into Panhandle Outdoors because I still love that too.
Yeah.
And it all, what's the center of all of it? Of course, God is the center of all of it, but His nature, His world that we have that we can appreciate, and
When as they start their journey through life at that point too, to where they're becoming adults and gaining responsibilities and all that, I think having those fundamentals of just how to approach life is so critically
yeah,
important.
yeah.
So
One of the things I tell them, I give them advice, and one of the things I tell them, and when they're leaving at 18 years old, I said the next couple of years are going to be some of the most important years of your life.
yeah,
And I tell them, about having a strong faith and having going outdoors. But I tell them, show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. So you hang out with some good outdoor people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
don't go about hanging out in bars and stuff like that. And I just tell them face to face what it is.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for young folks, the people that you hang out with are a reflection of the
Yeah.
kind of person you want to
Yeah,
become. You know?
exactly.
And I think you have to be mindful of that when
Mhm.
you're a young person and you have ambitions to become something. Surround yourself with the people that you want to be like, and
Mhm.
and that's true
Exactly.
not just as kids, but also even as adults. I
Well,
mean,
that you hit the nail on the head because we just to concentrate on all these young people, but when you're 30s and 40s and all, the same kind of
same
situation.
principle. Yeah,
If you hang around a bunch of guys out there drinking in a pickup truck, that's not good.
yeah,
But if you go with a bunch of guys like y'all do and doing all kind of good things and all, that's good.
yeah,
And it's reflective of that at all
yeah.
ages.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
Well, I'm grateful for your impact on people in our community and the kids in our community, man. It is incredible the things that you've been able to do in your career and continue to do.
Mm.
And so I certainly appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about that today. So
Wow.
it always great to have a talk with you, Coach.
Well, listen, thank you for the opportunity to share some of these things. Time has flown by. I'm so impressed with what you've done, your accomplishments at your age and your attitude on it. I appreciate that.
No, thanks, Coach. I've got your footsteps in the follow in. So hopefully the things that we do, the hope is that we make impact with people and, they can learn things from the conversations that we have
Yeah.
and that, that knowledge can continue to get passed on. And, that's the hope with this kind of stuff and doing a podcast.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. Thank you for
awesome.
doing it.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for being on. Y'all, I would like to again thank our sponsors, Kramer Marine. Thank you for getting me out of constant trouble when I break down in Howard's Creek, like I normally do. But thanks for keeping me fishing. Bass Tackle Supply, please go on their website and support it for 10% off any order on basstacklesupply.com. You can use the code TWORODS, 2 rods, for 10% off your order. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. We will talk to you real soon.